Xenoblade Chronicles, the third one, except it's actually the fourth main game in the series, and like the sixth if you count the two expansions. This video might actually be under an hour this time, because all the little additional things I needed to say last week pushed the thing that I said was going to be under an hour over an hour, so we're gonna try to make that not happen this time. Spoilers for Xenoblade 1, 2, Torna, and Future Connected. Thankfully, we got a significantly smaller amount of content than usual this week, despite an entire blog post coming out, so I don't have to double up on a lot of things like before, and maybe, just maybe, I can make something relatively succinct. Don't hold your breath on that one. You can see the time code. Okay, I am not going to even begin to attempt to maintain that level of energy throughout the entire video, so we're going to talk about the least interesting thing first, and that is about 60 to 65% of the Xenoblade Note Volume 3 blog post that was published on Nintendo Japan's website on May 19th, as this is probably the least revelatory blog post out of all of them, because Volume 0 was the Takahashi letter, and 1 and 2 contain significant revelations that only got tweeted about even in Japan a little bit later. This one, on the other hand, is actually recapping things from last week and talking about a couple things that we're going to learn more about this week. So it has an Explore the World section. The main characters, Noah and the others, will run around various fields in the adventure. This time I would like to introduce some of the fields of the vast world Ionios. And then it talks about Milik Meadows, Aegis Wilderness, and 2 areas we'll learn about from tweets this week. And then, if you meet an enemy, there are many protists and strong enemies chasing Noah in the field. Here are some points to remember before you battle with enemies. If you remember this, you may be able to advance the battle to your advantage. And then it goes on to describe normal, elite, lucky, and unique enemies using the exact same wording and images as the tweets from last week, as well as the whole lore command video, which also showed off a little bit about the unique monster system. So out of all of this blog post so far, the only brand new information isn't actually brand new information, because the 2 area descriptions were in tweets earlier in the week, and those got officially localized, so I'm going to get to those when I get to those. The last section is the only piece of the entire blog post that contained new information at the time of publishing, and it is the Comfortable Field Exploration section, with 2 small subheaders talking about skip travel and field skills. The day after this post was published, the skip travel information was also tweeted out on the Xenoblade JP Twitter account, while as of the 22nd, the field skill information is exclusive to this blog post. And since I usually handle the information in the blog post last in these videos, and I know that if you haven't read this one already, you are terrified at the prospect of field skills returning in Xenoblade 3, I'm gonna save that for last to inflate my watch time. May 16th brought an absolute deluge of Riku and Manana content with 5 entire tweets from Xenoblade JP about them, which was cut down to exactly 1 in all international versions. So I'm going to talk about the newly English localized video clips that were also posted that day first. The first is the tank roll description. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 defenders excel at blocking and dodging. In battle, they draw the enemy's attention, making sure the deadliest blows never reach their allies. Attackers and healers tend to get themselves targeted by enemies, but can't take the heat. And it's largely a recreated version of the Lands clip that was accompanying the Japanese version of this tweet. However, of course, it is in the English version of the game, so we can hear a bit more of the dubcast scream out attack names and stuff. Most importantly, like the Japanese version, this clip is split in 2. And Len says, "Come here, I got something for ya," in both halves of the clip, which is already starting to indicate that this is going to be the commonly spammed voice line that becomes a meme in this game. We can also hear him say uppercut slash in the first clip, so it seems like that is going to be the name of one of his class's arts. Perhaps even more importantly though, we got more Rhine memes coming back, everybody! Noah calls Lands a lifesaver when he does the "come here, I got something for ya," which is probably his voice line for one of his provoke or taunt arts. So yay! Noah and Lands are just shulkin' Rhine too. I think nobody has a problem with this. You shouldn't if you do. I also want to look a little bit at some of Noah's animations here, because a lot of them are really cool. At the beginning of the clip, he does this really big overhand swing that looks sort of like an updated Minato Buster, and I'm thinking that is his talent art in the Sword Fighter class, which is Overclock Buster. As while we do see people use their talent arts, specials, whatever you want to call them, I'm going to use them interchangeably until we know the official name. And when it's a player-controlled character, that does slow down the game and do what appears to be a QTE challenge that we just haven't seen the QTEs for, like in Xenoblade 2. I'm guessing that to facilitate better combat flow or make switching better, when an AI character uses it, it first off won't slow down the gameplay and will also use a shorter, more truncated version of the animation, just for whatever reason the developers thought was a good idea. This is also backed up by the fact that the slowdown effects that show up when you land a heavy hit or cancel an art properly that we could see in plenty of clips, just more obvious in this lands one, does not show up when Noah uses that ability, so it seems like the slowdown is, first off, hopefully something that can be turned off, and also something that only applies to the player. And then later on in the clip, we can see Noah doing this weird little dance with either the dash command or just shuffling back and forth, so it's good to see janky AI is not completely gone from the series with this game. And next, the healer description. Healers in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 can restore the HP of their allies, strengthen their attack or defense, and even get party members who fall in battle back on their feet. Without a healer, party members would consistently lose HP to enemy attacks, so they're pretty important. And this is funny, because this is the most drastically different an English version of any of these Twitter clips has been compared to the Japanese version, and it's for what I think is a very funny reason, and that's just that whoever's responsible for capturing this footage straight up isn't as far in the game or doesn't have as complete of a copy as whoever's getting the Japanese stuff. Because in the Japanese tweet, the party is fighting a level 36 enemy in an area that we only get to see in gameplay in that clip, while the localized version is the same beachy lake area with a bunch of brogs that we've seen before. It was where Mio was fighting in the trailer, and the party is level 21, fighting enemies of similar level to them. And oh, one of the brogs goes down in the middle of this clip and they all hit level 22. So that's really funny, I guess. In practice, of course, this doesn't reveal anything about how healers are going to work in this game that we didn't already know, because the party levels up in the middle of the fight and that fully restores their HP. Yuni uses an art she already used in the Japanese clip, and the reviving clip that Japan also got has not been localized yet. However, we do get to see Power Ring on cooldown, and it's moving faster than Noah's arts were in the other clip. Also, I love saying Noah's arts because I come very close to saying Noah's Ark every single time I use that phrase, and I'm sure Noah's Ark is going to be relevant in this game, so that's very funny. But yeah, based on my calculations, aka looking at the video closely, Power Ring currently has a 15-second cooldown, which is significantly faster than even the faster of the two Noah arts we got to see in the other clip that got me concerned. Do keep in mind, she is a higher level than Noah is here, and is in fact the same level Mio was in the clip I was using to compare the Agnes arts to the Keves arts, so that might have something to do with it, though of course Mio had an additional mechanic that we have not seen from Keves classes yet, so that still remains to be determined, and we haven't seen switching yet, which I'm assuming they're saving for a direct at this point. Anyway, why does Yuni's buff art have a significantly shorter cooldown than Noah's bread and butter attacking arts? If you watched the last video, which you do not have to do to fully understand this one as always, one of my predictions for how they would continue to make the Keves circle arts engaging when compared to the Agnes diamond arts, despite their cooldown literally just being waiting around for something to happen, would be to make them scale really well with art level, because of course leveling up your arts is probably going to be a thing in this game, and I may just be right here. I cannot come up with a reasonable justification for placing a buff puddle on the ground while a healer, not even an explicit pseudo-DPS, pseudo-healer support-based class, would have a much shorter cooldown than just straight up attacking the enemy with a big hit as a DPS class. Granted, we have not seen buff puddles on the ground for particularly long in any clip, so we don't actually know how long they last for, but looking through a combination of various other clips, we can see what appears to be Yuni's Power Ring buff puddle on the ground for a large percentage of 15 seconds. So it seems like it's not going to be particularly hard to get maximum uptime, that is, the buff always being out, on Yuni's Power Ring even relatively early on in the game, because again, level 22 in this clip. To put things into perspective, Shulk's Slit Edge inflicts physical defense down on one enemy. In order to have 100% uptime on that debuff, which is Slit Edge coming off of cooldown before the debuff falls off of the enemy, you need to level Slit Edge to level 9. There is zero way any of Yuni's arts are just one level away from being capped in this level 22 clip, so it seems like both the efficacy and cooldown of circle arts is going to scale very well with art level, and may serve to mitigate some of the concerns I've been talking about. Of course, once again, the best way to alleviate all of my concerns would just be showing off the class system and how switching works, but again, we're getting a direct at some point. Xenoblade 2 did that as well, so I have zero reason to believe we won't have one for 3. Napon time. Riku, voice actor Sayaga Senbonki, is a Napon with extra thick eyebrows that belongs to the same Keves Colony 9 as Noah and others. At the colony, I'm also in charge of item crafting and maintenance of the Iron Giant. So, okay, a lot of this is stuff we knew already. We saw from a clip earlier that Riku was friends with Noah and the rest of the Keves party from an early age and seems to be part of the military with them at some point. Him being in charge of item crafting makes sense. I theorized that in a previous video. And since we already knew he was a mechanic, him doing the maintenance of the Pharaonis, the Iron Giant, for the colony makes a lot of sense. It seems like the theorizing a lot of people had, including one very dubious 4chan leak, about Riku being the one responsible for the gem crafting equivalent in this game, especially since we see in that one really blurry image of everyone at a campsite that there is something that sort of looks like an ether furnace there, was in fact true. So there's not a lot interesting about this clip, just the fact that Colony 9? Now I know this shouldn't come as a surprise. Colony 9 was still around at the end of Future Connected. Several people, including myself, even pointed out that the colony Noah and friends are in the Ethel flashback, where Riku was there, and also the place where Noah is in the second trailer where you see Earth in the sky, looks a lot like the Colony 9 military district. I'm just surprised that Colony 9 is just a thing, and the Keves characters are all from there. So, like, I've been saying they're going as repeat playthrough of Xenoblade 1 as possible with the Keves side for some reason, and that's hopefully going to be subverted in an interesting way, because if they just do Xenoblade 1 again but with one side, and then the Agnes side is actually evolving on things from 2, then one side is going to be extremely boring compared to the other. But I just think it's interesting that they made everyone legitimately from the same colony as Shulk and his trio. The other thing is, we see regular buildings. If the city where Ethel rescues the party in is in fact Colony 9, and I have all the reason to believe it is because Colony 9 buildings are there, that means that not every colony is going to necessarily be nomadic like we've been led to believe. Obviously, Alchemoth is probably still going to be around, and I would assume Agnes has a more stationary capital, so I didn't expect literally every settlement from these two nations to be roving around on a big mech and walking around and doing things like that. However, the fact that Riku was in charge of maintaining the Pharaonis Iron Giant of Colony 9 seems to suggest that not every colony, even, not just every town and city from Agnes and Keves, is going to be as mobile. So, while I am certain Colony 9 is going to have its own chief, like its own Ethel or Kamaravi type person who pilots the big mech and does things like that, it seems like in this case, the big mech that goes with Colony 9 is just a big mech that goes with Colony 9, and not literally how the colony packs itself up and moves around the world. There's also a 12-second video clip of Riku talking in Japanese that appears to be from the cutscene where the two sides of the party introduce themselves to each other after the Wild Ride fight, because it's the same sort of area aesthetic, they're still in their military uniforms, and we can see very Van Damme looking stuff in the background, like this would be equipment he had, so this is probably soon after the Wild Ride fight and Van Damme's death. Riku uses the English words Colony 9, crafting, and maintenance, so it seems like he's just describing what the previous tweet talked about him for doing. Although, I guess the previous tweet really doesn't think his Rex wig / afro is an interesting deal, because it only highlighted his eyebrows as an interesting feature, so that's some in-universe Napon facts for you, I guess. I am very stupid and almost forgot to read out the actual description of that video clip. Riku doesn't panic in any situation, and he has some perspective, and his advice to Noah and the others is also appropriate. I want to leave the maintenance of weapons to Riku. So this isn't really a lot that we didn't already know. This sort of implies that Riku is the most level-headed and mature member of the Keves party, so it's possible that he's at least a little bit older than Noah, Uni, and Lance. It also reiterates that he's not only the crafting guy, he's also the weapon maintenance guy. So my guess that he does the equivalent of gem crafting and weapon modification is still true. Next up, Manana, VA Ayasuzaki, belongs to Agnes and is good at cooking with a cook hat. She's working with Mio and is in charge of cooking. She has a great cooking skill and was the chef at the former colony. This tells us almost nothing. It says cook 4 times. I wonder if Manana's entire personality is going to revolve around cooking. While the first of the images that goes with this Manana tweet is just her brandishing her shield, and the last one is just her jumping around in the scene where everyone's introducing themselves, the second and third are fantastic. The second is a freeze frame of the shot from the trailer where she's spinning around, and this one is frozen in such a way where she is double T-posing with both her arms and wings, so that's great. And then the third is quite possibly the most "do you have games on your phone" face I have seen in years. So, good job for choosing good screenshots, developers. I like Manana more than Riku now. Also, we can get better views of Mio, Senna, and Tayon's army uniforms, and Senna's looks pretty cool. We didn't see a lot of hers and Tayon's before, so that's neat. Manana got a video clip as well, of course, the description reading, "Manana is always thinking about food. If you find something that could be an ingredient during your adventure, ask Manana to cook it deliciously. Manana has a very cheerful personality, so traveling will be fun." This basically just confirms that she can do crafting in the form of making food, and again tells us absolutely nothing about her personality other than very generic chef character who likes to be happy, which can describe a lot of characters in a lot of things. So while her facial expressions are fantastic, I'm not really getting a good read on either her or Riku's characters, so whatever. The important thing though is, in the video clip, Manana is talking about things that she can make delicious food out of, and mentions the word Gonzalez, so this not only confirms that a movable Gonzalez is also going to be returning in this game, but serves as a reference to the Poppy scene where she talks about how strong she is and embarrasses Pyra for being heavy. I will be very disappointed if the dub line for this isn't "Manana could even cook Gonzalez if necessary," directly mirroring that thing because we have a direct mirror to the Lifesaver line. The last tweet about this pair is the only one to get officially localized, and of course even then it misses out on some crucial information. This charming Napon pair, Riku and Manana, is one of the special allies known as heroes that can be recruited to fight alongside you as a 7th member of your party in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There we go. This is how the 7th party members work. It seems like they're not directly controllable while the other 6 all are, and they probably will not be as customizable as far as class and stuff goes, but throughout the story you'll be able to encounter allies. I'm sure plenty of them are going to be straight up required characters that you meet, and those will act as your 7th party member, and they'll all go under the moniker heroes, so there's probably going to be a separate heroes section in the menu for you to properly manage, choose which one of them you're going to take with you, probably outfit them, and stuff like that. We have already seen several other characters that are heroes, as Valdi and Xeon both show up explicitly in the 7th party member slot, and there's also mysterious green Gormati character with a bow, which is a weapon that we have not seen before anywhere else in this world, so I'm guessing this character is also going to be a hero and at least temporarily join the party at some point. My guess would be that this is going to be handled somewhere in between Xenoblade X character recruitment and Xenoblade 2 Blade Gacha, where either through the story or by doing a specific side quest, you will have a character join your party, and after completing that story beat or side quest, they can be called on at any time. I'm guessing it's going to be a bit closer on the X side of things, just because there's probably going to be less characters than Rare Blades, and there's obviously no gacha, so again, like how everyone wanted Rare Blades to be. And then, like in X, where you could learn a character's signature arts, you will be able to gain access to techniques these other party members have for your main characters. However, my guess would be, like in 2, you just straight up get their weapon as a new class. I'm guessing there's just going to straight up be a heroes section of the main menu that is separate from your outfitting the party section, where you can choose which heroes going in your party, manage your affinity with them, look up maybe side quests that have to do with them specifically, and customize them in various ways. The only potential weirdness about taking the classes of heroes for yourself is Riku and Manana themselves, as the Japanese version of the tweet has text on their picture. It says Riku and Manana and has a DPS symbol with the sword icon that we've seen previously, but also underneath their name is what appears to be the icon for their class, because it has Riku's gun multi-tool thing. I'm guessing since he's a mechanic, it's like actually a multi-tool, not literally just a gun, so more sonic screwdriver than Glock, I guess. And then Manana's pot lid shield. And next to it, katakana that says Yumsmith. So it looks like their class name is literally going to be Yumsmith. The problem with this is, first off, Riku and Manana seem like they're going to just explicitly be part of the main party through the entire story, so they might not want to give Yumsmith to the other 6 characters just because you will always have access to them no matter what story flags are being tripped at any point, so there's a little bit of redundancy in giving it to a party member. And then there's also the fact that they don't use blades. These are actually manufactured equipment that they use as weapons and not an intrinsic part of their biology or whatever, or however blades work in this game. They're the only ones that are seen drawing their weapons instead of summoning them in cutscenes, so it seems less likely that the party will be able to access those weapons and use their class as opposed to literally everyone else, as Valdi has the tattoo, which I think is connected to being able to summon a blade, Xeon is wearing a Kevis military uniform, and the Green Gormati appears to also be wearing an Agnes military uniform, as well as the bow just having the little aesthetical flourishes that make me believe it is an Agnes blade weapon. So yeah, I have a feeling that every hero except Riku and Manana is going to give you their class, while Riku and Manana are probably going to give you some other buff, and my guess would be their role in crafting is going to be the way they make up for them not actually giving you a class. While getting 5 tweets condensed down to 1 was extremely rough, we're at least going back to the status quo of only getting 2 tweets converted to 1, as next up we learned about Isserd. Isserd is a seasoned tactician and commander of Agnes's colony Lambda in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Once a former mentor to Taion, taking him under his wing to train him up as a tactician, Isserd now greets his former ally as an enemy. The only information really being missed out in the English version of this tweet was one sentence that was only in the Japanese version that said he has a straightforward personality and has a lot of trust from his subordinates, but can't forget a certain event in the past and he seems to feel guilty about it. We also got 2 more screenshots from the trailer in a little bit higher resolution from Japan. This is primarily just a little bit of relationship chart information being trickled out into a little bit more accessible, especially in English tweets, and getting nearly the entirety of his full body art is pretty cool. We can also again see that he has ether lines on his body and the same bags under his eyes that Kamaravi has, suggesting that at least these 2 characters have some connection to them beyond having blade weapons and tattoos. My guess would be that they are some form of blade eater, because unless they were awakened by the same person initially, and that is what caused their similar appearances, I struggle to think why 2 different Agnes colony leaders would have such tired-looking appearances unless there was something biological going on with them that had to do with them being a colony leader or a powerful Agnian soldier. I guess you could also just say that without Taion, he's losing a lot of sleep, but whatever. The event in his past that he feels guilty about is almost certainly the death of Nimue, as that is the one big thing that he's talking about in the second trailer, although he does seem to be blaming the Ouroboros in the party for that, so I might have to amend my theories about her and think that, oh, yeah, she died because of a different Ouroboros than the ones in the party, and Isserd is trying to take revenge on all of them for that, as opposed to her literally being part of Wild Ride somehow and explicitly getting killed by the party members. If you have not been keeping track with all of the funny Xenogears references, this guy is literally Ramses. I don't have anything else to say. He's Ramses. This game is just a stealth Xenogears remake. I was not kidding the other 50 times I said that. Moving onward, May 18th brought us the 2 other area descriptions that I was talking about. The first one is the Great Kochi Falls. I don't know how that's pronounced. Probably gonna have to wait for like an actual dub actor to pronounce it. It's C-O-T-T-E. The Japanese isn't very helpful because it's Konti Otakifu, as opposed to anything easily directly translatable, so we'll figure that out later. Anyway, I'm gonna call it Kate. Xenoblade Chronicles 3's Great Kate Falls is a great place for a swim and features a giant waterfall that's just begging to be jumped off of. Cannonball. The Japanese tweet includes an additional sentence also mentioning that you can see Isserd's colony Lambda Iron Giant there. This was blatantly obvious if you paid attention to the trailers and other footage. We can clearly see Isserd on the top of a Pharaonis Iron Giant in the same area before, so this just confirms that this is where we're going to be encountering them. As for the 4 images that went with this, the first one is basically another shot of the same lake that we've seen a dozen times already. There's the Iron Giant for Colony Lambda, there's the Flamies, there's the item orbs, there's the waterfall, there's a Bionis-y wingy looking structure, there's some more purple fog on the right side of the screen, so hey, fog beasts are going to be a thing. There's a little metal structure looking thing on top of the falls, and then part of the Mechanis' sword, so it looks like this area is going to be a little bit closer to Sword March than the Milk Meadows and Aegis Wilderness, so that's interesting. I had several comments in the last video saying that I must not have played 1 or X recently if I thought the amount of item orbs was higher than usual, and I think people were just misinterpreting what I was talking about when it came to the concentration of item orbs. Because of course 1 and X both have plenty of areas with higher orb concentrations than we've seen in any of these images. However, those are all out of the way hidden secret areas, and these are just landscape shots of regular landmarks at most, and there's already that many more items, so they're clearly rethinking something about how they're distributing items. As for the returning areas from Xenoblade 1 and 2 that make up this area, it's surprisingly up in the air. The first thing to jump to would obviously just be, oh, it's Machina Forest, because that's where the only other big waterfall in the series was. But the second area we're going to talk about in this video is explicitly Machina Forest, right down to the name, so I genuinely don't know. We could just be getting 2 Machina Forest areas, but I am still not entirely sure. The big wingy structure in this first image does look more Bionis than Allrest, so I think it does have something to do with Xenoblade 1 Titan structure. This could sort of be Bionis' shoulder, I guess, but the hoverstone in the shoulder seems like it would still be active even centuries after the rest of the Titan fell, so I'm thinking that if we go back to Bionis' shoulder at all in this game, it's going to still be a floating island, so that's probably out. My guess would be that it is just 2 Machina Forest areas, because Machina Forest is relatively big, and this area got the whole waterfall area, while the other area got the more jungle area, which is backed up by the fact that there are some palm trees in addition to the more generic deciduous ones around. So yeah, not really much else to say about that. The second image has a bunch of buried blants in a lake. There's even more fog. I can see a much more Xenoblade 2 looking Titan structure on the right side of the screen, so it's possible it's either part of Oriya or whatever Titan made up this on the Xenoblade 2 side. You could sort of guess Leftheria, but we already know that there's an Aerith Sea Leftheria area that we haven't seen anything of outside of the first trailer, so that's a bit wash. So, I don't know. This could very well be partially a Xenoblade 2 Titan that we never got to see in the main game. It could be Remnants of Torna, or it could be something like Specia or Estem, even. It fits Specia, honestly. Who knows? Third image is much more interesting because it shows another side of the lake and a decrepit building with pinky purple vines growing next to it that's almost certainly a way to climb up there. And then we can see that a piece of the building juts out and looks like it could be used as a way to climb the cliff and go all the way to the right. So that's a Moritha building in this area in Xenoblade 3. That's interesting. And then also climbing's back. It was in 1 and 2. That much shouldn't be a surprise. Fourth image just shows a rainbow and looking out at what I believe to be part of Oriya. So again, this is either the area right before you get to Sword March or the area before that area. I do think the second area we're going to talk about today is right before Sword March based on a lot of things, but this one is also very, very close. We can see in the bottom middle a campfire, again backing up my whole Torna campsite theory. There's more item orbs, there's more palm trees, and there is a rainbow. This rainbow makes me think Great Machina Falls because that's the most iconic place to see a rainbow in either Xenoblade 1 or 2, so again, I think we're just doubling up on Machina here, which isn't really a bad thing. Machina Forest was one of my favorite areas in Xenoblade 1, and I'm very excited to try and figure out what little Xenoblade 2 secrets are actually hidden around in this area, because which area from 2 this is made up of is not immediately obvious, and that's way more interesting than if it was. As for the second mystery area, this massive forest filled with flora is Xenoblade Chronicles 3's Mactha Wildwood. The fruits that grow here are famously sublime, so make sure to pick some to sample on your travels. Why did they put South Jersey in Xenoblade 3? I don't want to wish that on anyone. More seriously though, this area is a combination of Machina Forest and the land of Moritha. I was not expecting to see more Moritha content in 3. I was really expecting all of the Xenoblade 2 areas to just be Titans, and that's all we had indication of in the past. But this is so much cooler, and brings up possibilities of things like, I don't know, Goldmyth and Argentum crashing into the Frontier Village tree, or the Frontier Village tree and the World tree getting fused, and that being a bunch of cool stuff. So this is very welcome, and all of these images look very cool. As for enemy level range, this is where the level 36 enemy from the Japanese healer demonstration video was fought. So I am thinking that this is the last area before this game's equivalent to the Big Prison Island twist, which takes place at Sword March itself. I think this because while Xenoblade pre-release information loves to spoil the hell out of these games, the big spoilers usually do not happen until the actual launch trailer, so this being a specific big endgame area doesn't seem right. We're also all, I think, guessing that reaching Sword March is only like the first act of the story, and there's at least going to be another half of story after you get there. This is the same area in the clip where Uni is fighting a level 36 enemy, so the level range is on par with Machina Forest from Xenoblade 1, which is the area before the area before the area before Prison Island, which is where 1's first big twist happens. So yeah, I'm thinking that this is the second to last or third to last area from just the first act of the game, because any areas that obviously take place after this, we have zero indication of because everything about them is extremely out of context. The first screenshot here shows a big zip line in the foreground, some buildings that can clearly be walked around in the background, a lower, more forested platform to the bottom right that appears to have a red item orb in there, or the footprints from Xenoblade 2, not entirely sure, but there's only one element, so it's probably just an item orb. Also, while I'm thinking about it, I was wrong when talking about tombstones. They do not disappear when you resummon the unique monster in Xenoblade 2, so I was just incorrect. There might not be 2 unique monsters in that area I was talking about. And then on the left side next to the flower is what appears to be some sort of beacon, again suggesting that the player can finally put waymarks on the map in a Xenoblade game, which is good because it only took them nearly 2 entire Zelda development cycles to put that in Monolith's main series. The second image is just more buildings. It appears to be the exact same shot from a different angle, actually, except without the zipline there, because you could see the beacon in the plant that was next to it before, and it mostly just shows that, yep, that's a thing you can climb up. The third shot is, again, a more forested area, this time showing a tree, a few item orbs, and an aspar, as well as more of the pinky-purple vines that are probably climbable. I'm guessing this tree is near where you'll find some of the ingredients that Tweet talked about, and Manana can use them to make interesting food. The fourth image is cool because it appears to be the bottom of Frontier Village. It's not exactly the same, but it bears similarity enough to where it could easily be a remixed version of it. There's bamboo, there's plenty of item orbs, there's a goat-like creature, there's something red in the background that might be a red item orb or some other kind of special collectible, and there's another campfire very conspicuously in the bottom left of the screen, again suggesting Torna campfires are back. If this is somehow related to the bottom of Frontier Village, though, is the village still inhabited? Future Connected implies that it did survive the whole world transfer thing at the end of Xenoblade 1, and that it's still populated by Napon, so not everyone moved back to Colony 9 or was stuck on the Bionis shoulder, so it's very possible that we are going to find some wild Napon not associated with either nation here, and that's going to provide a lot more insight and help us on our travels into Sword March. Also, based on the trees around here, I'm guessing that the scene in the first trailer where Noah and Mio are playing their flutes together takes place somewhere in this area, or in returning to this area after going to Sword March and finding new appreciation for each other. Moving back to Japan exclusive content, we have this clip. Noah's class Sword Fighter Art's Sword Strike can also destroy enemies when attacking from the side. Thrust Edge can do a lot of damage when attacking from the back. Noah seems to be good at attacking the sides and back of the enemy. This tells us nothing other than positionals are a thing, which we were already able to tell when the trailer released a month ago by reading. While we can see some of Noah's arts cooling down, the clip likes to pause and zoom in and out a lot, so it's not really a fair way to gauge how long the cooldowns are, even though he is at a significantly higher level than the previous clip I was worried about. Next tweet is one of the 2 things that debuted in the blog post for this week. There are landmarks in various parts of the world. You can always move to a landmark that you have visited by skip travel. It seems that there is a rare landmark called Unexplored Area inside, so I want you to run around this wide world and find out what kind of place it is. This is basically just saying that landmarks, skip travel, and secret area type landmarks all function like they did in previous games, and while the first image is the actual map menu, so that's a massive thing, the second is just everyone standing around at what I'm assuming has to be a Milik Meadows secret area, as there are the Bionis Leg Hills in the foreground, but there is a surprisingly good view of the Orion Titan from here for something as far away from Sword March as Milik Meadows seems to be, and the Mechonis sword cannot be seen, so either there's some weird perspective thing here, or this screenshot was accidentally taken relatively far on in the story, and something picks up the Mechonis sword at some point, which I would not be surprised if that's a thing that happens. As for the map screen, we can see that the UI is keeping its orange and purple theming to go along with the Ouroboros, and I guess a relatively complementary color to that, and we can see the map of what the top of the screen says is the Asia region. This is now the 3rd area that we do not have a bio for, as the Cadencia region was referenced in a previous Japanese clip, and the Lieb Plateau appears to be an area near Millick Meadows and Aegis Wilderness that was seen in the Lucky monster description. Now, I do note the difference between some regions being forest, plateau, meadows, and some regions being called region. So I think that the world is going to be a little bit more open, and the regions are going to be a bit more similar to continents from Xenoblade X, where they contain several different areas that have a vague connection to each other, but are all technically different biomes, and would constitute multiple areas in any other Xenoblade game. So, say, Millick Meadows, Lieb Plateau, and Aegis Wilderness are all combined into one specific area, and that's called the blah 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 region, or something like that. And my guess would be Great Kate Falls, and Mactha Wildwood, and then probably the Orion Titan itself are all going to be combined in the Sword March region. Or I guess because Cadencia makes me think Cascade, maybe that's the Cadencia region. I don't know. So it looks like maps are going to be bigger than in 1 and 2, and comprise of multiple biomes or areas that would be their own exclusive, separated out areas in 1 or 2, but the entire world is not going to be as connected as it was in X, which is a disappointment, but it looks like exploration is still going to be top-notch. As for the screenshot itself, the actual level design isn't distinct enough where I could easily tell where it is based on other screenshots, but we can see in the lower right-hand corner that part of the map is not fully filled in, so it looks like that is going to return from Xenoblade 1 as an exploration thing you can do. There are 2 different skip travel nodes. One looks more like a beacon thing, and the other looks like mountains, so I'm guessing the beacon is going to be like a regular landmark, and the mountains are going to be some sort of panoramic view or secret area. On the bottom, ZL and ZR change cursor speed. Clicking in the L stick is icon display. The plus button is list search, so probably searching for landmarks or items in a list. Y button is to add a user marker on the map, which is probably a beacon and the same thing as that orange swirl thing in the top screen. Hold down Y is to delete a marker, and then A is confirm and B or cancel as usual. The little daytime menu in the right-hand corner has secret area panoramic view listed on it, so it looks like when you teleport to a special view type landmark, you can change the time specifically through the map for the purposes of taking screenshots, which is kind of interesting. I'm guessing the regular change time command is going to be elsewhere in the menu, but this is a neat thing to do, and you could probably use some strategic warping and stuff like that to better facilitate farming for various things that only happen at certain times of day, so more quality of life. That's neat. And then finally, back to the blog post, because underneath the skip travel section, which highlights everything I just talked about, we have field skills. There are some places you can only walk on a tightrope or climb a wall. These special actions, field skills, will increase as you learn from the people you meet during your adventure. By adventuring and meeting many people, you will be able to explore a wider world. This is exactly how I wanted them to do field skills. Tie them to the party members themselves, and have you learn the non-necessary ones via side quests or meeting various people or doing certain things, increasing area affinity or that kind of thing, and then make it like a Metroidvania, locking off areas of the world that way. I do think it's kind of weird that ziplining and climbing, which were things that you could do in base in Xenoblade 2, have been locked behind field skills in this game, but that's not really a big deal. My guess would be the boat and potential diving thing we've seen in the first trailer are also field skills of some sort, and all in all, this is exactly what I wanted field skills to turn into in the next game in the series, so I'm extremely happy. You should be extremely happy. This is not Xenoblade 2 field skills. This is literally just more exploration abilities being unlocked as you progress through the story or do side quests and learn them from different NPCs or people. This is, I guess, a different learning power from other characters in the game system than heroes are, so I guess that could get a little bit confusing. I'm not entirely sure. The second screenshot is just Mio climbing one of the pinky purple vine things we've seen several times throughout Great Kate Falls and the Mactha Wildwood, but the first one is interesting because she's rail grinding above a giant chasm, and next to that chasm, we can see what appears to be Lieb Plateau and some of Aegis Wilderness, with what appears to be part of Gormott and the Bionis' horn in the background. So it looks like New Colony 9, or I guess it's just Old Colony 9 still at this point, is going to be relatively near the Millick Meadows, and the Aegis Wilderness based on the Bionis head being next to something very Gormott-esque, because we know Gormott is part of Millick Meadows. Also, is that Alchemoth up there? As for this whole chasm thing, this could potentially be that weird Mor Ardeni floating island area that we saw in the first trailer, or perhaps all of Ionios has been floating above the ground the entire time like Bionis' shoulder, and we didn't really know. That could be very interesting if the entire game actually has been taking place on a floating continent the entire time, and we just couldn't tell. It's also possible there's just a big hole in the middle of things, and that's an important thing, or maybe something happens and Oriya and the Makana sword get lifted out of the ground and stuff like that happens at some point in the story. I'm just spitballing things, but all in all, there were 0 bad things about this entire week worth of news, and I'm very happy about that, and you should be too, so tune in next time for more video games. Until then, this is Luxon, signing off.